So one of the biggest challenges that leads to most people exiting any type of agency, let's call it implementation based service, right? Because let's be broader. Any type of implementation is that the quality of the implementation is diluted as soon as the business owner steps away from the implementation of itself. And then what happens typically within many agencies is that there's a disparity in perception of quality based upon the sales call or the reputation typically the business owner has online versus the actual delivery of the project itself. So this is where there's typically a disparity. Okay, this is something that every agency owner experiences because you become a victim of your own success. You are unable to deliver without sacrificing quality of life. You then build a team, and your team don't deliver at the same level that you deliver. And then there's this question because you can't potentially pay the salaries that are required to get the level of expertise that you want. Maybe you can't, maybe you don't want to, maybe you do want to, but it's still not a certainty because there's many examples. And this is something that's not always covered. You can still pay people really well and get a shitty outcome, right? Because you've experienced it as well when you've paid good money for advice or for implementation from a third party and it's not got you the result that you want. So these are some of the questions that I understand are incredibly challenging. So I'm going to talk about a couple of key concepts that I think are really important in my eyes. So there's a couple of layers. So Ryan Stewart is a good example where he talks, and I don't think this applies to most agencies actually, and therein lies the problem. And I don't think it's going to apply to anyone in the room because I think this is less than 10% of agencies that actually do this, which is why his advice really is predicated upon people following his whole ethos. So his advice is productize your service and focus upon one niche. And that then allows you, of course, to build ultimately silos of delivery that really don't change to a degree. Okay. And there's still complications within that because I think at times that's potentially an oversimplification because algorithms change, tactics change, and there's challenges that come with it. But when you do niche, the variability, of course, does tend to go down. But what's interesting is that Ryan Stewart says that after 15 years of doing SEO and running multiple different SEO agencies. So I think that within that, there's so much education that's happened that it's not as black and white as that. And the problem, and why I say that it doesn't relate to many agencies, is because most of us, in the end, and maybe that's a problem of our business model, that's probably a separate conversation. But if I take it as a given that you don't have one client, one niche, one exact makeup, then the service ultimately has variation. But also, and I believe this to be true, that sits kind of above this, is within consulting, within agency, service delivery is inherently complex. It's inherently complex. The nature of consulting is complex because you have different decision makers, different buying cycles, different demands, and that means that delivering is complicated. Okay. So I think that that's where a lot of it falls down when it comes to that advice. At times, I think it's oversimplified because there's so many different variations. Some people, you can send email, you can have a really great, for example, report that you send to clients, which might be a 10-page PDF. And there's some clients that hate PDFs and they just want an hour call to go through it in detail. Some clients want a spreadsheet. Everyone has a different version, what I'm saying, of what success looks like. Because success for some people is getting a detailed PDF. A success for someone else looks a detailed spreadsheet. We've got some clients who don't want a spreadsheet, don't want a PDF, they just want the qualified leads and nothing else. But I don't care about any of that. So I'm assuming you guys have experienced these different kinds of complexities, and then it becomes, what it really becomes is a people problem. So we spoke, or I've spoken previously about the importance of building quality of content. Now I'm going to again talk about something that if you read books such as From Good to Great and Built to Last, Jim Collins, if you look at the histories of people such as Steve Jobs is a good example of it, and There's a couple other books that I really need to recall, but From Good to Great and Built to Last are great examples of it. And again, the reason I like reading books that are more than 10 to 15 years old is because they tend to a degree, have passed the rule of they don't have tactics, they have timeless principles. Does that make sense? If it's still valid and it's from over 10, 20 years ago with the way the world has changed, then it probably is still going to be valid in 10 to 20 years from now. So you need to balance your education with short-term tactics. What is the latest meta update? What is the latest algo change? With timeless truisms. And what's the timeless truism? That you live and die by the talent of your people. So if you already have an ability to generate an income, you should, as a CEO of your company, be spending a disproportionate amount of your time hiring, recruiting, and training. You need to treat your own team like the actual $1 million client. So your problem is that you're not training your team to the level that they require, and you're not recruiting people at the level of talent that they need to be able to deliver the work. So actually, it's a CEO problem. Does that make sense, Shiba? That people don't treat their recruitment. And for me, it's crazy because you are as good as your weakest team member, and no amount of checklist is going to change it. You give a checklist to a person who doesn't have the caliber or the talent, they will find different ways to mess it up. And also, checklists always change because processes always change. So the whole E-Myth thing today is complete crap about a systems-based business. I just don't think there's timeless overall strategies, but building a 57-point checklist went out the window when ChatGPT came along. Timeless, so things always change. When the only truism is change, look towards what the companies that have stood the test of time have done. And what they do is they focus so damn hard on recruitment. They're CEOs that spend 40 to 50% of their time recruiting, hiring, training, recruiting, hiring, training. And so, Shiba, if you are spending in a 40-hour week, let's say, 30 hours training clients, you're training the wrong people. You should be spending 30 hours training your internal team. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Do you currently train your team for 80% of your time? You do. You already train your team for 30% of the time? Or 80% of the time, sorry, I beg your pardon?
Not all of them.
Yeah, yeah. So and guys, as you break down the layers to this, right? And as you think really deeply about recruitment, there's a couple of different factors now, okay? Because people talk about I can't deliver, and the easy response to that is that cool, don't be so egotistical. Me, Deepak, to think that I'm the smartest guy in the room. That means that I have failed myself because I have not done a good enough job of attracting talent that's sufficient to replace me at Pearl Lemon. So there's a couple of different elements to this, right? A lot of people will say, well, Deepak, I can't afford $100,000 a year. And I'll say to you, no problem. Do you not think there are world-class lawyers, doctors, and government officials and people that go and work for NGOs that don't care about money? They go because of the cause and they're not there for money. Do you think these people exist? And you say, yeah, you see them in the movies where there's the banker and there's a person who wants to do social justice work and they've got equal levels of talent and one earns, and you've probably got family members like this, doctors who don't get paid much. Of course, you can attract world-class people in lieu of money. You just need to think about the problem more deeply and think, well, what is it that I can give to people that will attract them? How can I increase? And don't get me wrong, the irony is this happens at the top also. Deloitte and Netflix and Spotify probably aren't trading much on salaries. When people are making decisions between Spotify, Netflix, Apple, Google, if you've got those options, you're probably not thinking about the salary anymore. Does that make sense, guys? You're thinking about quality of work, quality of culture, mission, purpose, vision. None of those are money. Build those into the DNA of the company you're trying to build and you can get outsized returns because the quality of the talent that will begin to apply to your company will exponentially increase. And here, and you're going to laugh when I say this, we go back to the content piece again. If you can produce 100 days of content, 30 minutes a day, the quality of the candidates who are attracted to working with you will skyrocket as well. And most people think clients are the golden goose or clients are the ticket. They're not. It's your team. It's your team. Your team are going to be the people that make you millions. It's not going to be your clients. Your clients will come and go, but who's more likely to stay with you for the next 10 years? Your star employee or your client? So who should you be investing in more? Where should the 10-to-1 ratio of investment be? And small agencies need to think now like big companies when it comes to, and they call it the war for talent. Why do we think that, and this is the thing, our job isn't as complex as, for example, financial derivatives or astrophysics or becoming a brain surgeon. But then why do the top companies in the world choose to go and pick talented but untrained people who are university graduates? They are optimizing for talent and not for experience. Does that make sense? Yet we as small business owners often typically tend to optimize for experience above talent, when big companies and the companies that have lost have shown us time and time again. General Electric, Jack Welch, his story, he was at General Electric for 20, 30 years. As much as he made General Electric, a lot of people say General Electric made Jack Welch, and they had a factory that produced stars. You see it with football clubs. Treat yourself like a talent factory. And that gentleman will future-proof any business that you build, anything you do. Because at Pearl Lemon, the people that are doing my catering, they're doing my accounting, they're doing the legal, the operations people, a lot of them are coming from the agency. Because I don't focus on, for example, experience. I don't care. I want the smartest damn person in the room, because I will think, Sheba, I've hired you, I've recruited you, you went through, and this is what the big companies do, but small companies don't do it. I didn't look at your resume, or I did look at your resume, but I put you through such an excruciating series of tests that I think you're the smartest guy in the room. And I think with the right training, you'll be better than these guys that have been doing it for 7 years, because I'm training you to be special forces in this niche. But it begins with finding the most talented people and recruiting them and retaining them. Does this make sense, everybody, what I'm saying? Do you see how most agencies don't think about this stuff, and how most small companies don't think about this stuff? And for me, it's just crazy. It's like, if I want to build a $50 million company, I need to get the best possible people. And most people are lazy in their thinking because they say, well, I can't afford initially starting out 70, 20, 50, 100. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what people, there's so many people that stay in companies not for money. There's so many examples of people that take no salary because they believe in a mission and a vision. And what happens is that we get lazy with the way that we recruit, and we don't focus intensively on enough on the people that we should be developing, which is our people. And we don't take a long-term enough view of the people that we have and understand that experience is a smokescreen, because everything changes so bloody damn quickly that it's the wrong thing to care about. It's the wrong thing to optimize for. You need to optimize for IQ, and this is the thing that's timeless. Optimize for IQ, grit, loyalty, common sense. These things can be tested. These things can not ultimately be replaced with simply experience. And if you focus on that part there, simply put, you take care of your team and you build a great team and you really focus a lot. And by the way, when I say, think about it, CEOs spend 80-hour weeks and they spend 40% of their entire time over decades recruiting. If you look up the history of Steve Jobs, the details I need to recall, but he either thought the iPhone or the iPod was a bad idea. It was one of his executives who bought it to him. He wasn't the person that designed any of the Apple products. It was a bloody British guy. Most of Apple's best ideas didn't come from Steve Jobs. But what Steve Jobs was famous for also internally was recruiting, hiring. And no one is talking about that in the small business space, which is shocking to me. Because for me, it's like, well, we're doing this as business owners. We're going to probably be doing this in 20, 30 years. Let me find someone who can journey with me for 20 to 30 years. What do I need to do to attract the best possible person here, now, and today? Because you want to have the kind of people who you can say, we've got a client that's just coming in. They're expecting meta consultation and delivery. And can you figure it out? That's the person you want. And they'll say, cool, that's all I need. They'll spend 20 hours on the weekend learning the YouTube tutorials about everything to do with Meta. They'll spend some time launching a quick Meta campaign with $100 spend that you give them. And by Wednesday, it will be like they've already got a year and a half of experience of Meta. And then by 2 to 3 months later, they will outperform people that have been doing it for 5 years because they've got that level of IQ and work ethic. And that's what you want to focus upon. And that's actually the timeless part of how you solve client delivery, because the tactics, send them a check-in every 2 days, follow up and do this, give your team a process for how to deal with negotiation. These are all important, but they will rise and fall to the ability of the person that's managing them. Does that make sense? So actually, the key you need to focus upon is having the best possible people in the room. And gentlemen, CEOs spend 40% of the time doing it because it's fucking hard. It's not easy. It's hard. It's damn hard to get amazing people and to retain and stay with them. But it's the point of focus, or it's the area we're focusing upon, because that can change everything for anything that you do if you can build a great team. Because many of the best companies, Instagram probably wasn't the world's best idea, but it had a really great team. Teams build amazing outcomes. Systems ultimately rise and fall to the level of the team that you have. So I encourage and invite you to aggressively audit your recruitment, your retention, and your cultural life at your company. And if people aren't saying, I love turning up to work every day, and if you aren't getting, one of the metrics that we optimize for at Pearl Lemon is if we're getting less than 100 applications a day, I'm not happy, because it means that, and then soon as we hit 100 or we surpass it, recently we went to 130, 150. I said, we have too many applications. Let's make our process harder. And then we do technical testing. We do aptitude tests. So there's platforms that do it. Big companies do IQ and aptitude tests. We do aptitude tests. And then I say, cool. So I increase the quality and the perception of Pearl Lemon by producing that quality of content. We spoke about that, right? And you see how it's so important both ways. That increases the attractiveness that Pearl Lemon has as a potential employer. I then focus upon giving my team, not my clients, the best possible learning environment, the best possible chances of success. I learn about coaching, managing, building, nurturing my team, and then I rely upon my team to figure out all of the non-linear problems. Does this make sense, guys? And why it's not tactics. So, does anyone have any questions or comments about delivery on the basis of what I've said? I'll take any questions that you guys have got now. Cool. All right, guys. Well,
it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
no problem. So look, I'll wrap up then with the delivery side. That I think that for me, that's one of the biggest unspoken things that I've seen from the agency advice that I've seen. People aren't thinking the same way that Deloitte, Accenture, McKinsey, Google, Netflix, Spotify think. And they're optimizing for attracting the best possible untrained people, because they say we will have a training program that will teach you everything. So actually, I tend to think that if a company has lasted hundreds of years and this is what they've done, and you can read about it and From Good to Great and these books, that's probably the area that will over time produce for me the most outsized value. So 60% of my time, 80% of my time is spent on recruitment, retention, and training of my team. But it begins with getting the best caliber of people possible to come to the company. So that's what I'd invite you to focus upon. And if you're doing your job correctly, and this is the part that's challenging, you may over the next 3 years, because I've had to do it in the last year and a half, I've replaced 60 to 80% of my team twice because I forced the bar up. Okay. I forced the minimum standard up. I then have someone come in who would set a new benchmark. And then I had to go through the discipline and the pain of saying, well, if that's the new benchmark, that benchmark has made 30 to 40% of my team not good enough. And I cannot accept anything than that being the standard. And I think that these people probably won't get to where this person's standard is because they've come in and they're already that much better. Does that make sense, guys? That you want to be optimizing for a real. So take the best person in your team and say, if that's the minimum standard, I've got some, and it's a reality, I've got some uncomfortable decisions to make. And that's how you find your and do it. And this is the part, this is the thing. Doing that, and I'm still in that journey, right? Much like I'm trying to grow. Doing that has taken me about a year and a half. And I'm still on that journey because as I keep raising the bar and you make mistakes and it's not linear, but then you should be every 3 to 6 months looking at your team and saying, wow, the average caliber of my team is just better than it was before. And then they can learn the tactics. They can learn the tools. None of this stuff that we do, gentlemen, is that hard. None of it's that hard. You just need the right people in the room.